So personally, if I was the director of football at Manchester United, I'd try to get either Conte or De Zerbi this summer, but even then it's not certain we'd be able to get either. However, if you do want to keep Ruben Amorim, which Ineos do want to do, there's no other option but to completely rebuild the squad, Todd Boehly football manager style. But it's unrealistic to sell and sign that many players. Okay then, if it's not possible, you've got to then sack Ruben Amorim and replace him with a head coach who doesn't use one specific system, that requires specialist and highly complete skill sets, and bring in someone who is more tactically adaptable and will use a system that suits most of the squad. People will moan that the criticism of Amorim is unfair because he doesn't have the players that suit his system, but then when I suggest selling players like Agate, Xerxes, Mainu or even Bruno Fernandes who don't fully suit the roles that they would have to play, in order to then raise funds to reinvest in players who do suit Amorim's system and the roles they have to play, they moan and say it's stupid to sell them, and that instead we should focus on selling players like Antony, Rashford, Eriksen, Lindelof, Shaw and Mount. But Antony and Rashford are already scheduled to be sold, Mount and Shaw we likely aren't going to get any money for to then reinvest, and Eriksen and Lindelof are leaving on a free. And so that's why I talk about selling the other players, because the players that people suggest in response aren't going to raise the funds that we need. But before I go any further, if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to jerseyfifa.co. They've got a variety of different currencies and retro jerseys, including this 2006-2007 white Manchester United away shirt with Ronaldo 7 on the back, which they did actually send me, as well as this Juventus Zidane shirt from the 90s as well, which are two jerseys that I have been wanting for quite a while, but were incredibly hard to find. If you use code Atlantis at checkout, you'll get a 10% discount, so I'll leave it linked in the description and in the comments section below. See, even if you do sell Garnacho and Højlund, with the amount and quality of players that Amorim needs, you're going to have to sell players who aren't guaranteed starters week in week out, or simply aren't ideal for the role they have to play. We aren't doing this weird thing of blaming the players and then being outraged at the suggestion of selling players who likely wouldn't even be starters for Amorim if he could make enough signings. And so now I'm going to go through the entire squad and show you the scale of the rebuild needed if you do want to keep Amorim as head coach. So we need a new goalkeeper because Onana's doing my head in, and Saudi club Neom are reportedly interested, and we could probably get a decent fee. Bayendir as well should be moved on, and I'd bring in Joan Garcia for his £21 million release clause, and Yahia Fofana from Angers, who with 1 year left on his contract should cost around £10 million, coming in as a backup to Garcia. The wide centre-backs we should be fine, Mazraoui or De Ligt on the right, Euro or De Ligt on the left until Martinez returns, with Aiden Heaven there as well. But we absolutely need a new central centre-back because Amorim's whole build-up strategy is dependent on this player. It's not just simply about looking at the starting 11 on paper and asking if each individual player is good enough in their respective position. You've also got to look at what each player is required to do in different phases of play. Centre-backs like De Ligt, Euro, Maguire and even someone like Jonathan Tah are not well suited to that central centre-back role because Ruben Amorim insists on the central centre-back being the player to push to the edge of the box in the build-up phase. Either Amorim has to adapt tactically, which really isn't that hard, it's just switching a few players around. But if he doesn't, which parts of the fan base are adamant he doesn't need to, then you have to go and get a central centre-back like Leonardo Balerdi, who has the press resistance, technical ability and fluidity in his movement to be able to receive passes under pressure with his back to goal on the edge of the box, and as we see from players like Zubimendi or Adam Walton, be able to efficiently play out of pressure via short sharp passes, all with a feint, a drop of the shoulder and a drive forward into the space. If we don't bring in this type of player, we're going to have exactly the same issues as we've had this season, unable to build out through the centre of the pitch in the defensive third, forced wide too early, where we then get boxed in and are forced into a low probability long ball upfield, hoping the centre forward can win the aerial and physical battle, getting the ball under control and link in play with the players behind. Now don't get me wrong, we do have a lot of quality at centre back, but because Amorim uses his central centre back in such a specific way and refuses to make even the slightest of positional alterations, not even having to change the overall build-up shape or strategy, none of the centre-backs we have the ball playing ability to suit that role, and that has a significant impact on our ability to build out of pressure. And to be honest, there aren't too many centre-backs who can perform this role, and are also good enough elsewhere in their game. Balerdi for me has to be signed this summer because next summer, rather than costing between 30 to 35 million, it may be upwards of 45 to 50 if he doesn't go somewhere else instead. We then need a new left wing back because Dorgu at this point in his development probably isn't even ready to be a starting left back in a back four system for a side looking to finish in the top 4 or 5 of the league, let alone being a starter at left wing back. United need a left wing back with the offensive output of a wide attacker, just like we have with Ahmad on the other side. But Dorgu's ability and consistency with his end product in the final third is levels below what the system ideally needs, and so it was a strange signing from the start, particularly when we already had players like Harry Amas and Diego Leon, as well as a soon-to-be Real Madrid player Alvaro Fernandez being available in January for a third of the price, being a better left back and definitely a better left wing back. I would say just use the money from the 50% sell-on clause we have in Alvaro Fernandez's contract to go out and get Theo Hernandez. He ticks all the boxes, is approaching his peak age. He's been one of the, if not the best, offensive left backs in world football over the past half a decade, and given that he's only got 1 year left on his contract, he should probably be available for around £25 million. But also, because Ahmad seems to have at least one 2 to 3 month injury every season, and is also likely to miss 3 weeks due to the African Cup of Nations over the Christmas period next season, ideally you'd probably sell Dalot for around 30 million and bring in someone with greater offensive output who's better suited to that wing-back role. And my choice would be Vanderson from Monaco, who would cost around £30 million. I have got a video out analysing both Vanderson and Theo, so if you do want to check that out, I'll leave it linked in all the usual places, in the eye above and also in the description below. So already that's 5 signings, 2 keepers, 2 wing backs and a central centre back, and we haven't even got to the central midfield or front line. Matheus Cunha already looks like he's coming in for 62 million, which would take us to 6 signings, and we also seem to be pursuing Ederson from Atalanta, who was someone I suggested in my Who Manchester United Should Sign video, and would likely cost around £50 million, taking us to 7 signings, but even then you still have an issue in central midfield. If Ruben Amorim was willing to switch to more of a 3-5-2 shape in the press, transitioning into a 5-3-2 as we drop deeper into the middle and defensive thirds, then Kobbie Mainoo and Bruno Fernandes either side of Ederson works perfectly, with Ugarte able to come in for certain games to drop into the rest defence and give Ederson greater freedom to push higher up the pitch or drive the ball through the centre of the pitch, having that defensive security behind him. However, because Amorim is sticking with the midfield double pivot and apparently shouldn't have to adapt to the players at all, none of Ugarte, Mainoo or Bruno are the ideal partner for Ederson. See, pressing in a 3-4-3 requires both players in the midfield double pivot to excel athletically, physically and defensively, because if one of the central midfielders is a second or two too late to apply pressure to one of the opposition's central midfielders when they receive the ball, because Amorim uses 2 players rather than 3 players in central midfield, that slightly later press or even a missed tackle can now leave the other central midfielder completely isolated in the centre with a massive amount of space around him. Mainoo and Bruno wouldn't have significant issues if this was a midfield 3, but in a midfield double pivot, you essentially need specialist pressers who are not only able to cover large distances consistently throughout a match, but are also quick across the ground when moving to apply pressure, as well as aggressive and robust in a tackle. And to be fair, Ugarte does excel in this type of ball-winning role. The issue with Ugarte, however, comes in possession. Whilst Mainoo and Bruno Fernandes have the progressive passing or carrying and overall technical ability under pressure in tight spaces to be well suited to playing in the double pivot in possession alongside Ederson, Ugarte certainly doesn't have this, and against opposition sides who sit deep and compact and allow United to dominate the ball, and also specifically against aggressive man-to-man presses, Ugarte just doesn't have the passing, ball-carrying, press resistance or technical ability in tight spaces that Amorim's 3-4-3 possession system requires. If you could combine Ugarte's pressing and defensive attributes with Kobbie Mainoo's ability in possession, you'd have the ideal player to play alongside Ederson. But whoever is used there from United's current central midfield options, because of how complete Amorim's central midfielders need to be, they're going to have significant limitations either in or out of possession, and so you probably need another central midfielder as well, also with an incredibly complete skill set to come in alongside Ederson and provide greater creative passing ability from deeper areas to complement the powerful ball carrying that Ederson would provide. Now in the front line, Cunha comes in on the left, but you also probably need at least one centre forward, maybe 2, and also a right-sided interior forward as well. Amorim's build-up strategy requires a target man-like centre-forward, who has the physicality and aerial ability to not get dominated by opposition centre-backs, alongside the technical ability to be able to efficiently link play with first-time layoffs, or be able to bring the direct pass down under control, and then bring runners in from deep into play. Add in the need for pace and also ideally ball carrying ability when spinning into the channels, And of course the composure, ball manipulation, clinical finishing ability, and ideally aerial dominance inside the opposition's box, and the centre forward you need has to have a near complete skill set, with most of those attributes to an elite level as well. Liam Delap ticks a lot of the boxes stylistically, but he isn't elite when it comes to his goal scoring. Alexander Sorloth for me is ideal, but he is 30 in December, and so if Gyökeres is off the table, you'd probably want to sign both of those for a combined £65 million, or at least Alexander Sorloth on his own for around 35 million if possible. In terms of the right-sided interior forward, offensively Cherki is perfect, with his chance creating and ball progressing output being legitimately world class already at his fairly young age, but then there are questions around his defensive contributions and his overall attitude as well. He'd cost around £20 million, but if it wasn't him and United decided to go for more of an inside forward like Mbumo, you're looking at £50 to £60 million, or if you did want an alternative playmaker option like Alex Benya, if he was still available, or Franco Mastantuano, you're still looking at about 40 million. And so that's between 10 to 11 players signed, and maybe 6 or 7 regular starters sold in order to raise the funds, and probably close to £350 million spent if you aren't compromising on quality. And so that is a so-called football manager summer. If you fall short of that and only end up with 6 or 7 players being signed over the course of a full season, with injuries, suspensions and drops in form, Amorim's system is going to eventually get exposed, just because of how reliant it is on complete and specialised skill sets. You either keep Ruben Amorim and sell and buy in high volume to basically completely rebuild the squad, or you sack him and bring in someone with a system that suits the majority of the players who are currently there. If you do neither and end up doing something in the middle, we're likely going to end up mid-table with or without Amorim come the end of the season. It's a risk either way. So let me know if you agree with my analysis in the comment section below. Also, if you want to pick up any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to jerseyfifa.co. I'll leave it linked in the description and in the comment section below, and you can use code Atlantis at checkout for a discount for a limited time. But if you do want to sign up to my Patreon to read the articles or join the in-game Instagram group chat, I'll leave that linked on the end screen now as well.